US President Trump is known for his unconventional approach to diplomacy.
It's the best fragrance. Come here, man.
The European Union is in many ways nastier than China.
I grabbed that hand. I don't give a hell where that hand's been. I grabbed that hand. Rigged election. You know, he knows about rigged elections better than anybody.
The Chinese, they spy on us.
Do you think the French are better? Somebody was. You guys never know, right?
Perhaps most controversial is his approach to ending the Ukraine war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel, because you're in no position to dictate that. You're not winning this. You don't have the cards right now. What you're doing is disrespectful to the country.
That approach caused outrage after a recent US-backed peace plan seemed to favor Russia. Both European leaders and US lawmakers came out strongly against the proposal, which would have forced Ukraine to downsize its army, give land to Russia beyond the current front lines, and bar future NATO troops from Ukraine.
For any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board.
The territorial integrity of the Ukraine must be respected.
On sait que s'il n'y a pas les éléments de la dissuasion, les Russes reviendront et trahiront leurs promesses.
Matters for Ukraine are always to be determined by Ukraine.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the country was being forced to choose between its alliance with the US and its own dignity. Within days, the White House backpedaled.
This is a living, breathing document. Every day with input, it changes. That's an ongoing process. There's a lot more of that to happen.
Part of the confusion comes from the divided approaches towards the conflict from inside the Trump administration and the Republican Party at large. So, where did this plan come from, and why did it change? The story begins at the end of a different war. After finalizing a Gaza ceasefire deal in early October, US President Trump gave officials a new task. Now, do the same in Ukraine. The president's envoys, close friend Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner, got to work drafting a peace plan. The pair met Kirill Dmitriev, a senior advisor to Putin and CEO of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, who reportedly gave significant input into that plan. They're also thought to have consulted with Ukrainian officials afterward. Then, at the suggestion of Vice President J.D. Vance,
you should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
They sent U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, a longtime friend of Vance, to discuss this proposal in Ukraine. Driscoll reportedly pressured the Ukrainians to accept the deal or face defeat and a potential loss of U.S. support. Trump then embraced the plan and added a deadline. Zelensky had to sign it by Thanksgiving.
He'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
As panic spread through European capitals and beyond, diplomats raced to call up one man in the White House, the cleanup man, Sir Fix-a-Lot, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio backpedaled, framing the deal as an evolving framework rather than a final offer, scrapping the deadline and meeting with Ukrainian and European officials in Geneva to change it.
We have made substantial progress. We've really moved forward. So I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon.
So, how did so much change in such little time? The changes reflect incoherent foreign policy visions in the White House and beyond. The president has often been accused of favoring Russian demands during talks and using trusted allies rather than seasoned experts. This strategy echoes parts of his base, some of whom see the US State Department as controlled by a pro-war foreign policy establishment, who see aid to Ukraine as a waste of resources, and a smaller minority of whom may even sympathize with Russia's President Putin.
I'm not moving to Russia, but Putin has been the most effective leader in my lifetime. I can't think of a more effective one.
That view isn't just limited to his base, but includes some of the senior officials in his administration.
I don't regard Putin as a bad guy. That is a complicated situation, that war.
The American people don't want stupid wars. That was the legacy of the Republican Party that came before Donald J. Trump. It lost, but it was also a disaster for the United States of America.
In Trump's White House, where diplomacy operates more through personal envoys and business relations rather than experts or institutions, they've had room to pursue that vision. As one official told the Washington Post, you tell him, I'm going to try to get a deal. He will say, great, go see what you can do. And that's the level of detail he has. In that space, senior officials have considerable leeway, but that also means that different parts of the White House don't know what's going on. Once Driscoll delivered that deal to the Ukrainians, bewildered US officials said they'd got out ahead of things and that the process had moved too fast. And so, Secretary of State Marco Rubio went from privately assuring diplomats diplomats that it was just an opening Russian proposal, to publicly endorsing it as a US peace plan after Trump embraced it, to then saying it was still a framework to be developed. The incoherence involved highlights how foreign policy has become an arena for rival ideological camps in Trump's orbit. These factions broadly fall into two groups, one around Vice President J.D. Vance and another around Secretary of State Marco Rubio, both of whom are top nominees slated to succeed Trump as president in 2028. Both men have different views of what America's top priorities should be, and that clash is echoing in Washington and beyond. Republican senators have delayed nomination for the office of Pentagon Policy Chief Elbridge Colby, accusing him of freezing Congress out of key foreign policy decisions. Colby is one of the leading advocates of the view that the US should limit its involvement in Europe and the Middle East to prioritize confronting China. His camp of realists, or America Firsters, have disagreed repeatedly with the Republican establishment over support for Israel and Ukraine. More traditional and pro-intervention Republicans have tried to push back against this camp. Senator Ted Cruz, for example, has tried to distinguish himself by opposing Tucker Carlson and other more isolationist figures in the Republican Party over accusations of anti-Semitism and their stances on Israel. Now, the Trump administration's peace efforts, despite the chaos, are still ongoing in Gaza and Ukraine. But as concerns grow that the president could choose to take military action in Venezuela, it looks like some of the biggest battles between these two camps are yet to come.